Good morning, everyone. We're a couple seconds early, so we'll wait just in case anyone else is jumping on. But I'm excited to be doing Talk About It Tuesday this week or this month with Jen Breeze. She's a copywriter and marketing coach. I've used her services. I could vouch for her. She's awesome. So we're excited to talk this month about book blurbs and author bios. We're going to kind of unpack those. As writers, there's a lot of things we like to write, and then there's the things we don't. And I think definitely the author bio, most of us don't enjoy. But the book blurb can be challenging as well. So we're going to talk through some of that this morning. And it's 11. So Jen, I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michaela, for having me. I'm excited to be here and to chat with your group. So my name is Jen Breeze, and I am a copywriter and a marketing coach for Christian entrepreneurs and service providers. And I love, God has somehow put me in contact with a lot of authors. And so I do help many authors with their marketing piece because sometimes we love to write, but we don't like the marketing part of the writing. And so that's where I come in and help with making that something that's doable and doesn't feel icky because, I lean into scripture and God and principles that he teaches us so that you're not boasting about yourself. When you're marketing, you are presenting your book as something that your audience wants and needs and will bless their life in some way. So when you switch that perspective, it makes things so much easier.
That's so good and important to remember too. We all have gifts and talents. Yours is obviously copywriting and marketing. Ours is writing. And, at the heart of it, that's our offering, right? That's how we worship is through our gifts. So remembering that that's part of the process, and we're not marketing ourselves. We're marketing what God called us to do. We're marketing a product that he put together through us. And so there's some freedom in that for sure. So let's go ahead and jump in. I want to talk about book blurbs first. I think that let me give some backstory. So I'm in a lot of different writer groups on social media, and it's always interesting. First of all, there's a million questions I get asked. Some repetitively, of course, but what I find in those groups a lot of times is you may get 20 or 50 responses and opinions on a question, but you don't know those people. You don't know if they're qualified. You don't know if they've even published a book themselves yet, let alone or sold any. So I started to talk about it Tuesday because I wanted us to have a place to talk about these things with experts. And that's why you're here, because I have a book blurb on my book. I have an author bio, a couple of them actually in different places. And so I know what they are, but I'm not the expert in that. And that's where I want us to talk through, tell us a little bit about what the purpose of a book blurb is. Is it a summary? Is it, what is the purpose of having that even on your book?
Yeah. The main purpose of that blurb is to show a reader why they should buy and read your book. I mean, that's the main thing. So a lot of people get caught up in doing a summary, kind of like what you would have done in high school or college, like a
book report
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, there is a small aspect of summarizing what the book is about, but it's done in such a way that an average person who picks up your book is going to say, wow, oh, this is what I need. I just pulled up a book to model and it didn't even show up on screen.
Oh, that's great example though.
But yeah, the whole purpose is to get somebody it's to match your book up with the perfect reader.
And I think that's important for us to understand.
This is for you if this is intriguing at all, but you got to make it intriguing.
Yes. I think sometimes writers try to justify their book in the blurb. Like, this is why I wrote it. This is like, it's almost like a way that we're trying to find validation sometimes, as opposed to looking at it rather than establishing our credibility. It's really about reaching the reader where they are and drawing them in, like you were saying, creating that hook. And marketing writing, my background is in communications and marketing, and I still struggled with my book blurb because even though I know those things, I don't know them related to books. I know them related to churches, and I know them related to country clubs. I don't know them related to a book. And so understanding and kind of having that mindset shift, like you were saying, that this is really about marketing and not about my validation as a writer, not about how great my book is. Because sometimes it turns into that too. It's almost like a review. Like, oh, this book is, your life's going to be changed when you read Michaela Carson's book on blah, blah, blah. That's not really going to draw someone in, honestly, unless it's somebody who knows me, then they might, but most of the readers don't. So what do you think is important to include in the blurb? What shouldn't be there? Kind of give us a little bit of guidance, not too deep of a dive, but just a little bit of touch points.
Well, the part that I want you to focus the most on is that like first sentence, just the first one or two sentences, but really that beginning part is what's going to ultimately hook a person to even finish the rest of your blurb, let alone finish your book. So the job of the blurb is to get somebody to purchase your book, but those first couple of sentences they're gonna make or break it, because if it sounds like a high schooler's book report in the beginning, chances are nobody's going to even finish past that first sentence.
So that's an interesting thought too, because most readers nowadays are shopping on Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't even show you the whole blurb. It'll show you one or two sentences and then you click read more.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to grab them and make them push the read more button in order for them to even see the whole back of your book. It's not like when you're shopping in a store and you can skim it real quick. I think that's something I've noticed that's very different nowadays than when I was growing up.
Yeah. And there's no one set formula. I wouldn't, recommend a formula, but the way that you approach a nonfiction book is going to be different than fiction. In fiction, you want to kind of give a little bit of information about your setting and characters and that inciting problem, like get people intrigued by that, whatever is going to be happening in your story, how they're going to solve this problem that's come into their lives. I work mostly with nonfiction authors, and so it's kind of a different animal. But what I like to do is put myself in my reader's shoe. Like when I try to think of like who is the ultimate person who's going to read this book and love this book and be blessed by this book. Is it a male or a female? Is she in her 20s, or is she a mother with young ones, or is she an empty nester? Like really like diving into who that person is. And I'm a little bit of an actress, and so I maybe it comes easier to me, I don't know, but I put myself in their shoes and like what would they care about? Like what would make them continue reading? And so that's one of the biggest things I want you to try and do. Take yourself out of the equation as the author and put yourself in their shoes. What are they struggling with? What issues are they grappling with? What real world tangible things? And get as specific as possible, because generalities can be very they just don't grab. They're not as great of a hook as a very specific problem.
When you're talking about the differences between fiction and nonfiction, I immediately thought of some fiction books where I've read the blurb and it almost gives you the whole story. And it's like, well, why do I need to read the book now? You just told me what's going to happen. So
yes, see, that's where the summary can
like
get you.
You want to pull back and you want me to be like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to Jen? Like, this is crazy. I need to read this book. Like you want to create that sense of suspense. Nonfiction, which is my genre also, it's a little different. You want a hook, but it's more like, how is this book going to help me, change me, challenge me? Like what's in it for me part is a little different, I feel like. Any thoughts or suggestions on nonfiction blurbs?
Yeah. So you're looking at, what perhaps they're, I don't know, struggling with anxiety. And so you can, kind of paint a picture of how relatable that anxiety is, and that this book is going to give you a new perspective on how to work through that, how to reduce that. I'm just making something up. I'm not thinking of a specific book. maybe I should have gone.
No, that's a good example. I like that because
Yeah,
rethinking
so
anxiety. I would read that book.
you're talking to that woman who's struggling with that, she's trying to be superwoman. She's trying to be awesome at home and within her marriage and with her kids and at work and all the things. And she's just completely drained and she needs more of Jesus in her life. So you would write that blurb for her, showing her how you understand where she's at, that she's not crazy, she's not alone, and that this book is going to give her some insights to bring more peace into her life, some ways to maybe cut out the extras and focus in on what's really important, help her to reprioritize or whatever your angle is. You're going to show them that my book, this book you're about to read, and again, I haven't said this yet, but you should write it in third person. So Michaela's book is the perfect answer to help you grow deeper with the Lord. And,
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
So now we'll talk about that at the end. I think the harder thing to write, at least for me, and I've seen this with other clients and other writers that I'm friends with, the author bio is not an easy piece to do. We like to write, but not about ourselves. And I think a lot of writers struggle with imposter syndrome and things like that. And so it's very easy to try to like prove yourself in your bio. Like even with your blurb, I'd mentioned that earlier too, but like, this is why I'm qualified to write this book, or and we don't have to do that. First of all, we're qualified because God called us, and that's enough. And so just stand in that truth is my encouragement to you guys. But also with writing that, I couldn't do it. I'm gonna be honest. Like I started writing when I was 9 years old, and now there's a book. Here you go. Like I really struggled with it. So I had my best friend. I gave her some info about my writing, and I had her write it. I was like, wow, this is pretty good. So that was what I used. What tips do you have for writing an author bio? What are your thoughts on that?
So I agree that this is definitely a hard thing. And I think across the board in my years and as a copywriter, like CEOs have a hard time with this, writers have a hard time with this, other copywriters have a hard time with this. Like when I was in my like copywriting academy and I was a student coach in that group, and everybody's like, why is my about page the hardest thing in the world? Like I can write for other people all day long, but I write about me. And it's like, it's awkward, I think, to, in society, we're taught not to boast and not to brag. And so when you do your bio, there's sometimes you feel a little bit boasty. And so that can feel very awkward. And again, I just try to put myself in the reader's position. They want to know, who are you? What gives you the right to speak into my life? Are you my kind of person? And so you have to give them enough information to feel like they trust you, that you are likable and trustable. And I'm going to give myself these hours of my life away to read your book. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that I like to key in on with writing a bio. You want to reassure your reader that they're in the right spot. So I like to start with like an attention getting, why you've written this book, or why you love the topic that you've written about. Maybe that's a little bit better. And just reassuring them that they're in the right spot. If you do have some credentials or accolades, you could pepper those in. Non-professional tidbits are, I think people like that even more than your degrees or your certifications, like your hobbies, your favorite TV shows, your habits, your travel, it's just something more interesting about you. Maybe your family life, your pets, I've even seen in there. I do have one thing. For some reason, I'm overhearing about people that like coffee. Like a large portion of us like coffee, and that's pretty cool, but like, let's go a little deeper. What else can you tell about yourself
Okay.
that you?
So not coffee. As someone who doesn't like coffee, that actually turns me off, just so you know. If you drink coffee, I'm probably not going to
See?
read your book. So uh, a joke.
Um,
I think
yeah.
you mentioned something too. I think the author bio is a little different for fiction and nonfiction too.
Mhm.
With nonfiction, I do think you need to have a little bit of credibility. Whether it doesn't have to be a degree, you've served in ministry, you do have to have something to stand on when you're writing nonfiction. You know, whether it's coursework or degrees or life experience, I think you do need to
Mhm.
include that. Whereas I think with fiction, the reader wants to connect with you and know you're human and that you could be their friend. That's what I feel like when I'm looking at author bios for fiction. I'm like, oh, I want to hang out with her. She sounds like somebody I would like. So now I want to read her book. So I think the purpose and the structure is a little bit different too. Would you agree or disagree, or
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think that's definitely true. Um, if you're writing a nonfiction book that's kind of teaching or a self-help kind of a book, you do want to give a little bit of information on what gives you the right to speak into their lives. If it's a parenting book, then I would hope you would write about your experience as a parent. Like, hopefully you've had kids and um, can speak with some authority and experience in that
You're not
realm.
a 19-year-old single woman giving advice on marriage.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, that makes
So it
sense.
doesn't have to be like earth shattering, like amazing, like, oh my gosh, you skydive and go to, rock concerts or what, like, it doesn't have to be amazing. It just has to be relatable
And better than coffee.
and better than, yeah, a little deeper than I like.
little deeper than coffee.
I
Okay.
like coffee and Jesus.
Yes. That's what gets me going in the morning, right? So let's say you've written your bio, you've written your blurb.
Mhm.
What's the next step? I know when you write the manuscript, it goes to an editor. There's a process that you follow. You have beta readers. What do you recommend? Because we don't always put a lot of emphasis on these two things, and they're so important because they're both marketing tools, right? If we
Yes.
want our books to sell, we have to market them, and these are two important parts of that. So, what would you recommend as like a process? Like, I know we all know the process for writing a book. You have your beta readers, you have your professional editor, you have your formatter. But we don't really talk about that a whole lot when it comes to the blurb and the bio. So, what
Mhm.
would you say the process should look like for that?
Oh, that's a great question. So, I honestly, I just start by getting words on the page. I probably just like regular writers, like just your sloppy copy, like
I
get
love it.
some
Sloppy copy.
ideas down and then go back and polish it up. Your blurb, I believe, should be around 150 words. Is that right?
I think it depends a little bit on genre,
Yeah.
but yeah, for nonfiction, I think it's around 150.
And that's, these are things that you can easily Google, for your genre, for your age. If you're writing children's literature, it's
True.
going to be
Yeah,
different than.
definitely not that many.
So, Google that and just decide on a number. I mean, you can't really mess up the world, but there's um, ranges that are reasonable and expected. So make sure that in your document that you're checking your word count. Like, oh my gosh, have I gone 3,000 words, or if I've gone way overboard. um and that's going to give you an idea of how much you're going to have to cull and pare down. um but it's just like writing. You're going to have to, I would want you to go through multiple rounds. I want you to like put it away for a day or two and come back at it with fresh eyes. And when you sit down, don't be Michaela the author, be um, Jennifer the reader. Put
Mhm.
yourself in their shoes and try to read it through, read out loud. That's another
Oh, that's
thing, because
yeah.
that you can catch some inconsistencies or some lengthy sentences, or things will stand out to you when you read it orally versus just silently scanning the page. So I always try to read the copy out loud to myself, as wearing the shoes of my reader. And is this going to compel her to want to buy the book? Because we hadn't mentioned yet, but most of your readers these days are not browsing Barnes and Noble and picking up a physical copy of your book
It's true.
and wanting to look They're not holding it. They're digitally looking on Amazon, where they're going to be given that just like first top of your blurb, or maybe they're buying, on Audible or Kindle. And so you know, this is a really important marketing tool. I want to emphasize, like, don't just make this like a quick passing, like I got to put something on the back cover. Let's just slap that on there and be done.
Mhm.
Take your time with this and
They're not
have
gonna
other
read the
people read
inside
it.
if the outside's not good. They're not.
Exactly.
It
They're
it's
not.
sad, but it's true. Um, I will say from my experience, when I wrote my first book in 22, I should know that. In 22, when I did my first book, I was really insecure and uncomfortable writing the blurb and the bio, and that's where I connected with Jennifer. I actually hired her to be the polisher, to put I wanted someone with experience and qualifications. It can be a copywriter or a marketing person.
Mhm.
It can also be a peer reviewer. We're in a writing group together here on the Deeper Growth author group. So, if you want to share it with the group and get some feedback from other writers who've published and who've kind of had the pitfalls and the successes and things, that works too. But it's really important that you're not the only one seeing it, because you're going to miss stuff, just like in your manuscript. You want to make sure that there's other eyes on it before you go live with those.
Absolutely. Yeah. That, go through it yourself many, many times and then hand it off to other people, peer reviews, um, marketing experts. Definitely, I would recommend that, because um, it's a worthwhile investment in your time and your money, because you're going to sell more copies if that is all as pristine as it can be.
Now, one of our group members did ask a question beforehand. She was wondering if you had any samples or templates of what you consider to be good blurbs, good bios, that type of thing. And you and I talked a little bit. And Jen actually offers it's a course, right?
It's
Like a,
it's a just a 1 hour workshop,
okay.
and yeah, so it's called Billboard Worthy Bio Workshop, and it's free. So I'll give Michaela the link to join in there, and you can just watch the hour-long video. There's a Google Doc that you can pull, so you've got some examples in there, and you've got some questions to help frame your thinking, and prime the pump and get that brainstorming going. And yeah, so
Okay.
you were more than welcome to download that to get your bio going. And I would
I've got
love,
that link. I'll drop it in the comments when we wrap up here in a couple minutes. So if you're looking for that,
yeah.
it'll be in the comments. And
If you
then
have
as far
questions,
as
reach out to me, because I would love to help you.
Jen's
And
amazing. I've worked with her on a couple different projects, and I absolutely can't say enough about her. She's really good. As far as book blurb samples, you and I were talking a little bit before we went live about look at books that you like.
yeah,
I mean, that's the best.
you can Google, like, good book blurbs, and you'll get some pointers on how to really nail that copy for yourself, or at least get started before you pass it on to whoever's going to help you polish it. Um, but also just go to your bookshelf, or go through your library, um, and I like to read the blurbs, and just be really analytical and critical in a what's the word, in a positive way, but just analyze, like, does this make me want to read the book, or is this boring, like, and if it's compelling, what makes it compelling, how did they start this? And so just do research in your own library, on your own bookshelves, of what stands out to you, and file that away. We can't, you never would want to copy somebody else's work, of course, but just paying attention to, like, oh, well, they started that with a really intriguing question, or, oh, their hook was just a really powerful statement that kind of goes against the grain, or, oh, this hook was actually more of a they were posing a problem that needs to be solved. Um,
And I
does that make
appreciate that you
sense?
said, yeah, I appreciate that you said Google it too, because I think sometimes we're afraid to use Google as a research tool on certain things.
Hmm.
Um, 18th century dress for a historical fiction novel. Yeah, sure, I'll Google that. But when it comes to these types of things, The hard part about book blurbs, and like you said, it can't really be formulaic. There is a formula, I'm sure, for each genre, but in terms of us talking today, there's so many genres and subgenres, it'd be really impossible for us to give you a ABC of how to write your blurb. And even like we talked about with bios, nonfiction and fiction are different as well. So but definitely put in there, good book blurbs in historical fiction, 1920s or whatever it is you're writing, but be subgenre specific also. Don't just look at your genre, look at your subgenres. And when you're looking at your bookshelf, don't pull up your favorite fiction book if you're writing nonfiction, because that's not going to be the right match for you.
The
So make
genre
sure
is
that
very
you're looking at the books on your bookshelf that are in your genre. I know for me, I had to actually go buy nonfiction books because I didn't read a whole lot of them in order to get an idea of what to do. So, and support other local authors. It's a great thing. Any other thoughts on that, Jen? It's like you.
No, I was pulling some books from my bookshelf to see if I could, so this is like a Joyce Meyer book.
Oh yeah.
A war is raging. Your mind is the battlefield. Worry, doubt, confusion, depression, anger, and feelings of condemnation, all these are attacks of the mind. If you suffer from negative thoughts, take heart. Joyce Meyer has helped millions of people. So it's third person, and it's not necessarily starting about how great Joyce is, right? It's talking about a very common, relatable problem that many of us experience, and starts to give you hope that like, ooh, maybe there's something in here for me.
And also identifying with not being alone. I think that's really important in nonfiction. A lot of readers feel like they're the only one dealing with it. So when they pick up a book that talks about it, it's like, maybe I'm not the only one. And they're kind of even just that gives them hope sometimes to know that there's something bigger. I know for me with fiction, and I think that's why it's important what you were saying earlier too, to know who your reader is. Not all fiction readers are the same. I love strong character development. I love book series because by book 10, I'm so invested in these people's lives. Like I love that part of fiction. I'm not one to pick up a quick start and end cute story. That's not the type of fiction I generally read. I don't dislike it, but I'm not that ideal reader. So going back to that too, I just wanted to mention that, like, make sure that you think through who, if you're not a writer who, if you're more into plot than you are into character development, then write to that person who's also looking for that plot that you're putting together, because that's who's gonna grab you, whose attention you're gonna grab. I want to know about the character. I want to know about the main character in a fiction book. I want to relate to her because I want to feel like I'm part of her world. But that's me as a reader. So like definitely spend some time thinking about that. I loved that tip that you had, because I've never really thought about that with fiction, about how the reader really does differ depending on the type of writing that you do. Some men who write those action novels, I remember, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. I want to say it was like Tom Clancy or someone. I was reading this book and I'm like, you just spent 4 pages describing what this gun is like. Like, I don't care. I don't care. It's a gun. That's all. It hurts people. That's all I need to know. I don't need to know the color. I don't need the year it was made. I don't need to know how this mechanism works. Like, just stop. So I am not his ideal reader. And I did not read another one of his books because I don't care about guns. So
that's how I was about Stephen King. I remember like he's just like such a big name. And I read one of the books and I'm like, he just described things for way too long for me. I'm like, let's move on with the plot.
So it's okay to not be I think as writers, we want our book to reach everyone. We do. We want it to, but that's not reality, because God made people different. So step into how he created you as a writer, and step into the fact that your audience is a specific type of audience, and figure out what that is. If you're trying
to please everybody, then you're going to excite nobody. Like don't try to write to everybody. Just keep that one, like some people even say just one specific person, like your avatar person.
Yeah.
And that will then translate into more women like her or men, whatever. But yeah, if you're trying to make your book appealing to everybody, and I have worked with authors that are like that, like, oh, well, this is for men and women and established
and children and adults
leaders and like all these things. I'm like,
you're going to miss a lot more than you hit. That's for sure. I write for women. But I have had men read my book and they're like, well, this is for men too. They need this. And I'm like, okay, but my writing style is to women.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to them like they're my friend. And that doesn't always resonate with a guy.
Right.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So,
And you will definitely bring in outliers. There will
of
be
course.
people that you weren't attention, and that's great, and that's the blessing of God. But most people, like you said, you need to pick up that book and be like, oh, this is for me.
She
I'm
wrote
not
this for
alone
me.
in this thing, and I want to know more about it.
Well, I'm so glad we have this time together.
Yeah.
I will share your website in case anyone wants to reach out to you and connect with you. And I'll also share that link for your workshop on the bios. And if you guys have questions, you're welcome to put those in the comments. I can go back on replay and respond to those as well. So thank you, Jen. I pray you have a great day, and we
Thank
will talk
you.
soon.
Yes, I'm
All
so
right.
glad you had me. And just like, don't hide your book under a bushel, guys. Just you have to do the marketing part so God can get it into more hands.
Yes. And it's worth it. It's hard, but
Right.
it's worth it.
It is. It
All
is.
right.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
Jen.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.